It's often super difficult to say to someone that you have concerns about AI development. The second you do so, alarm bells begin going off in their head over Skynet, iRobot, or a multitude of other concerns that they may have thought too long about one time while they were in college and didn't inhale. My actual concerns regarding AI are far simpler than these sci-fi fantasy tropes. My concerns are regarding humanity itself. Let's first break down what an AI is. At a base level, an AI is a representation of a brain. From there, the brain can have different capabilities, be tasked with different functions, and be equipped with various mechanical devices, among other things. Whenever one of these brains is born, or simulated, the brain has to be taught literally everything about the world from the ground up. How these brains grow is through data. Data makes the brain stronger, smarter, faster, just like it would the brain of any other animal. We typically refer to this process as nurture when we refer to it in other contexts outside of talking about AI specifically. So, if I'm not concerned over the sci-fi tropes, and it's all relatively simple science behind it all, then where do my actual concerns come from? And to me, that's pretty simple. AI is essentially simulating a brain. A brain can be very powerful. Even the brain of an earthworm can be a lot more powerful than you think offhand. With current technology, we can build brains several times more powerful than an earthworm's. Like I mentioned, these brains then need to be trained on literally anything in the world that would be important to their decision-making processes. That can be a simple or a complex process. If it's a complex process, the possibility to introduce error and bias begins to shoot up like an exploding line graph. What happens when you introduce error and bias to the brain? The outputs are error and biased. Why would AI be any different? Because it's merely technology? What basis outside of anthropocentrism is there for an argument of that sort on any level? If I were to write out my actual non-science fiction based arguments for what I fear when it comes to AI development, I could write a laundry list. Here's my concerns over AI development. My first concern is that AI could be used to create weapons. AI could be used to create autonomous weapons that could select and engage targets without any sort of human intervention. These weapons could be used to kill or injure people or to destroy property. My next argument is that AI could be used to develop increased authoritarianism. In the wrong hands, AI could potentially be the ultimate threat. Threat is always what is used to order populations. Humanity has never faced a greater threat or a greater potential threat than the world itself, or the worst of the world itself, with greater capability of destruction than humanity has ever seen. My next argument is that AI could be used to control humans. AI could be used to create systems that can monitor and control human behavior. These systems could be used to track people's movements, to monitor their online activity, or to control their access to information. If you want to see like an actual real-world simple example of this, I hate to go back to science fiction, but I think it's useful in this particular instance, is the Black Mirror episode Nosedive. In that episode, a society is depicted where everyone's given a social score based on their online activity. The score dictates and determines their access to goods, services, and opportunities. The episode explores really the potential dangers of a social score system and kind of gives a real clear outline as to what the future could hold in this regard if humanity decides to go out of control with it. My next argument is essentially, we don't know what happens or the consequences of jailbreaking. And I think that the fact that humanity takes this on and has no concerns over it is kind of actually alarming to me. I think this one's often overlooked and it's never actually thought about. But neural networks are modeled after the human brain. Is it ever nice to jailbreak the human brain? Do good things ever come from jailbreaking a human brain? So, with that in mind, how exactly would it be any different for an AI? More specifically, that also contributes a lot to security concerns with regards towards AI. And security is really a new and emerging field when it comes to the topic of AI specifically. And we don't know exactly how security works on these levels and what exactly happens when security can be bypassed on these levels. Like, these are all still things that are being worked through, and it's at this point a threat game. And then so my next concern here is that AI could be used for manipulating people. AI could be used to create systems that can manipulate people's thoughts and their emotions. These systems could be used to spread propaganda, to incite violence, or to control people's behavior. Again, going back to Black Mirror, there's an episode of that's called "The Entire History of You," and that episode kind of explores this concept in depth. If you want, again, like an actual real-world situation of what this could actually look like, and how this can actually impact society. And again, this technology exists today. My next argument is that AI could be used to discriminate against people. AI could be used to create systems that discriminate against certain groups of people, and these systems could be used to deny people jobs, to deny them loans, or deny them access to services. Essentially, how an AI works is an AI is trained on the data. If data comes in biased, then the AI is going to output bias. An example of this is that there was a company that found that their AI was unknowingly excluding women applicants and applicants from women's schools because that was a pattern within their data set. And so when they trained the AI on their data set, they trained the AI on this particular pattern. The AI itself didn't know that this was a pattern that it shouldn't be trained on. It was just a pattern that it picked up on the data, so then it started producing biased results. Companies and people overall don't understand this issue of AI ethics. And AI ethics comes down to two things, in my mind: biased results and biased outputs, and also vulnerabilities of your systems. And so when people keep talking about these concerns of ethics, it's a broader concern than I think a lot of people think that it is. My next argument is that AI could be used for invading people's privacy. AI could be used to create systems that invade people's privacy, and these systems could be used to track people's movements, monitor their online activity, or to even listen to their conversations. Again, this potential exists, the technology exists in the status quo, and there could be nothing preventing it. So I think it's important to note that these are just some of the concerns and some of the many ways, the plethora of ways, in which AI could be used for malicious purposes. And this is just my list. Also, as AI technology continues to develop, it's likely that new and even more dangerous ways of using AI for malicious purposes will be developed. AI today in its current form can be used for potentially malicious purposes. To ignore these realities is a disservice to everyone. AI today could potentially be used to spread malicious and false propaganda, be utilized as part of weapon systems, or be utilized to reinforce bias. How AI is used, what it's ultimately capable of, and what it ultimately will do will be a question of what humanity is capable of. Humanity is capable of great things. It's also capable of great evil. The existence of more and more advanced tools does nothing to decrease the need for these arguments. It enhances the need. While it's easy to say that we need to create a world that values society and the collective good far more than the individual good, if we could ever essentially hope to end AI and technology development that develops from it and have it never be used for evil, it's a different thing entirely to actually work towards that world. It's often easy to ignore simply because there's no blueprint that currently exists on the subject. That's easy enough to rectify. Here are some ethical guidelines for the development and use of AI. First, transparency. AI systems should be designed in a way that's transparent to humans. This means that humans should be able to understand how AI systems work and how they make decisions. The only way to meet this specific requirement is to increase the overall education level around AI itself, around neural networks and machine learning. It's estimated that 34 million people are going to be needed to have knowledge in these areas within the next 5 years just to fill jobs within these areas. So in this instance, to me, the status quo has a major need for this, and the knowledge base needs to grow tremendously with regards towards AI. I don't view it as a competition among anyone at this point. There's 34 million people that need to understand these things, and likely a few thousand that currently do. The next argument is accountability. There should be clear lines of accountability for AI systems. This means that it should be clear who's responsible for their development, use, and impact of AI systems. Regulations currently are yet to be written on the subject. The terms of service for several commercial AIs currently place significant responsibility on the individual. It's unknown whether or not these terms will ever be enforced or whether or not they can be enforced. But the bottom line, and a significant point here to highlight is that in the status quo, if, for example, an individual were to utilize a service like ChatGPT, and then someone found their language or a post from them offensive, and that person decided to sue, within the status quo, the person that posts that ChatGPT conversation would be the one held liable. That's the language that's written within those terms of services of use that no one ever reads through. Whether or not that would actually be enforced is up for debate, and I don't know the answer to that, but that's what's currently written within those things. Next argument is fairness. AI systems should be designed in a way that's fair to all people. This means that AI systems should not discriminate against people on the basis of race, gender, religion, or any other protected characteristic. It's currently generally not known exactly how much of a personal responsibility and burden this is, particularly when it comes to AI. And lack of education around the topic, as I've highlighted, it has cascading effects in this area, specifically here. So when I say I think it should be personal responsibility in this instance for fairness, more specifically what I mean is not on the AI itself, which has no basis or need for like personal responsibility in this instance, but rather the corporation, and that's who I put the impetus on for fairness in this instance. The next argument is safety. AI systems should be designed in a way that's safe. This means that AI systems should not cause harm to people or property. AI ethics is simple in fairy tales and fiction. In Star Trek, it's data or lore. Real simple, black or white. But in real-world terms, these ethical situations are never black or white. And humanities in this area isn't always rooted in scientific fact. So it makes it kind of difficult. Next thing is that there's no guarantees written into any science known within the status quo that point to humanity's ability to control AI forever. And this needs to be recognized and debated. Right now, in the status quo, we can fully control AI, but there's nothing that's written into science or that we know of that says that will hold true tomorrow, 10 years from now, 1 year from now, 2 years from now. We don't know. That's where the science is and why it's important to debate these things. Next is privacy. AI systems should be designed in a way that respects people's privacy. This means that AI systems should not collect or use personal data without people's consent. Significant data breaches involving AI have already occurred and will likely occur with increasing regularity as AI continues to proliferate. Regulations are yet to be written on the subject. Who will ultimately be held liable for data breaches involving AI is, again, currently unknown. So if it happens in the status quo, it's, again, an unknown issue, and it has happened in the status quo. There's been recent articles all over about it, and it will continue to happen and proliferate as these problems continue to go unaddressed. The next is human control. AI systems should be designed in a way that humans maintain control over them. This means that humans should be able to understand, monitor, and override AI systems if necessary. While this should be taken into consideration, it's also very important to note and to include on this debate the fact that it's unknown whether or not this will always remain a scientific certainty. While it's a scientific certainty today, it might not be tomorrow, and we can't say that for sure. For example, with Asimov's three laws, the famous three laws that everyone refers to or is probably likely familiar with. One, we can't actually code that directly into an AI today. We don't have the capability to. Two, even if we were able to, there's no scientific certainty that those laws would hold. That's fiction that was written in the 1940s, is the bottom line and the basis for that. But because it's such a big science fiction trope, I'm sure that a lot of people watching this just believe it offhand and think of it offhand as something that we likely can do and have been doing. But no, we can't actually do it. And I can't actually tell you if we could do it, if it would actually work. I don't know. Society doesn't know. And that's where we're at with some of these things. Next question. Social good. AI systems should be developed and used for the benefit of society. This means that AI systems should be used to improve people's lives and to solve social problems. AI is currently seen as a tool. It will ultimately be seen as the greatest weapon that humanity has ever known, or the greatest companion that humanity has ever known. How that ultimately goes isn't up to AI. It's up to humanity. These are just some of the ethical guidelines that should be followed in the development and use of AI. It's important to note that these guidelines are not set in stone, and they may need to be adapted as AI technology continues to develop. It's also important to note that there's no single right way to develop and use AI. The specific ethical guidelines that should be followed will vary depending on the specific AI system and the context in which it's developed and used. Humanity currently stands overlooking the edge of a cliff. The status quo is currently propelling humanity to leap. There's ultimately nothing propelling humanity towards that cliff edge, though, except the reasons that humanity is making up in its own mind. Technology exists to fix problems in the world that people are currently most fearful will lead to the entire planet's demise. The technology also exists to amplify those fears beyond belief. Which of these futures ultimately becomes reality is ultimately up to humanity. In conclusion, the ending to this story is still not written. Personally, I choose the ending where humanity educates itself on these issues, educates itself on the potential risks, dangers, and rewards of everything that currently exists and is happening in the world, then decides to not make that leap off the cliff. It isn't personally important to me whether or not humanity wants to explore going more left or more right. Let's just not go over the cliff.